Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Insights with Experts. Today, we're honored to have with us Joel. How are you, Joel?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks for having me on this podcast. A little bit weird to be defined as an expert because I've never seen myself as one. But I guess we'll roll with it and see how this goes.
Probably also weird to be the guest, right? Because you're normally the host of different podcasts and different
Correct,
content. I think
correct. So it's nervous right now, actually.
no need to be quite informal. So the first question, I guess, would be maybe explain a bit of your background in communications media, and then more specifically, perhaps go in depth about how you sort of became influencer, which was through your GE 2020 analysis.
Sure. So I recently graduated from NTU. I mean it's been 2 years, but I still say recently, and I still want to continue saying recently because I wanna keep saying that like I'm a young person and everything. I think dealing with the aging thing is a bit scary. But yeah, I studied communications as well as visual communications in NTU. I did a double major there, and then once I graduated, I started working in a social media agency, PR agency kind of. And then, as you alluded to, over last year in 2020, when the elections happened, I guess like a fluke situation went down, and like some of the content that I made on social media went viral. And from there on, I guess I started building like quite a like nice little community of people who want to learn more about politics and also like the way things work in Singapore. Yeah, I hope that covers it. I don't know.
Yeah, so to build on that, I guess, why did you feel a need to cover politics in Singapore, and how do you think your reach, and how do you think, I guess, the next generation will consume information and content through social media?
Right. So let's break it down, right? So like the first part of the question was like, why do you feel a need to talk about it? Well, okay, like when as I mentioned, like the entire thing was accidental. So I've always been very noisy on social media, and I've been on Instagram since like the early days. I remember being like a student in JC and using Instagram back then only for the photo filters and not as a social media platform. So I would use Instagram to edit photos, post the photos on Twitter, and then like continue on. And then after that, Instagram became this like whole like social media like monster. And yeah, so I've always been noisy, I've always been opinionated, since the Twitter days. I've always been just like putting my opinions out there. And of course, like with GE 2020, I was the same, right? I was just like putting up my opinions online. And I think that a lot of people in my social circle are like that as well, just very opinionated young people. And I guess it's kind of like a lightning in a bottle moment where it's just like everything just came together, whereby COVID-19, everybody was stuck at home, and of course, like then the election and the campaigning had to be done like virtually. And then that's where like the conversation shifted, right, from like kind of like on ground and whatnot to more like a social media platform. And then I guess also this is like the first kind of election where we kind of see a lot of young people coming, like becoming a lot more interested and curious about politics. So there's that. And then of course, like, I guess the online space is interesting because with GE 2020, we see how there are a lot of like very opinionated people who would give their like viewpoints on things. And then for me, like I was trying to be funny at the beginning, and I was just like analyzing certain videos from like entertaining my friend's point of view. So I went down the humor route. And yeah, so that was what I was doing. I wasn't really like intending to actually go viral or anything. I was really just posting as I would and entertaining my friends. And then from there, I guess things got shared, and then more people started coming in. And like I think halfway through that journey, I was reading through the DMs that I was getting on Instagram, and a lot of them were like, "Hey, I'm actually a first time voter, second time voter, and before all these, I actually wasn't that interested in politics, but your content made me interested, and then now I'm kind of like hooked, right? So like, where do I go from here? Can you explain like term ABC when it comes to politics?" And I looked at that and I was like, oh, I can't, like I understand it on my own, but like to understand and to talk about it is very different from teaching it. So I was like, okay. So like that's where I started pivoting a little bit more to be like educational, and that's where I like worked with a bit more like knowledgeable people on the topic to like kind of put more information out there. And then that's where I think like the whole pivot to what you would call an influencer is, you know, with what I do today. I'm still very uncomfortable calling myself an influencer actually. So this is like, I guess the next part of your question, right? Like the whole influencer part. Well, interestingly enough, before GE 2020, I was, as I said, like working in a social media agency. So I work with influencers actually behind the scenes. So like, for example, like campaigns, ads, whatnot. Like I work alongside influencers to put things out there. Mostly I do PR and events. So there will be the talent people who actually manage the influencers and whatnot, and I work with them. But like, you know, the realm of influencers are very much so in my I would say like professional career. So from what I see, I think that like an influencer is really quite a job, you know, like they put in a lot of effort to like maintain like a feed and everything. So yeah, so when I first started getting called an influencer, I think like every time I was referred to as one, I kind of like died a little bit inside, because I was like, no, like, you know, I don't do all those stuff. I was literally just putting my opinion out there. But then after that I realized that actually, you know, like the term itself is so like loosely defined, and I guess kind of I've learned to accept it as what it is, and that's where it is. And then the third part to your question is like why was it why it's important to voice out our opinions now?
Sort of why and how did you specifically start to, I guess?
Like why I think is because with social media, and I think that I've been such a big proponent and like a champion for like social media as a platform, is that, you know, now so many people can get hurt with the platform. Like it really gives everybody a voice. Of course that's a double-edged sword, but then also like, you know, if you choose to consciously use it responsibly, then you can actually find out a lot more information out there. And I think that the only way for people to hear you is if you speak out or speak up, right? So that's why I feel like that hopefully that answers like the why question. If for example, like someone who is very concerned or very passionate about like issue A, doesn't speak out about issue A, and I don't have never come across like issue A in my life, in my own bubble, then I wouldn't know that issue A exists. So like that's why I feel like it's important for young people to speak up. Yeah. And then what is the second part?
I think you covered everything
Okay.
basically. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah. Nice. Okay.
yeah. Sham?
No, but yeah, so I just want to like expand on what you are saying as well. So lots of what we're talking about is about voicing our opinions, trying to get what we think out there. And why I like this next question so much is it's not just related to really your work in SG, in media, and so on. It can really be carried along to any professional situation that anyone finds himself in. Now, there's quite like a stark line between what are our thoughts, what are our opinions, and what is the content, what is the information that we need to put out there for everyone to actually see. And I said that goes into any environment, whether you're in a work environment. What are your opinions? What are the opinions that you should actually be saying instead? Now, in Singapore specifically, let's talk about the context here. As somebody who puts out content, have you ever found it challenging to really stay in between these lines, I guess? And have you ever been worried about potentially the repercussions of airing your thoughts and so on? I mean, I just want to really find your opinion on this entire thing.
Right. So as I mentioned, when I first started out in like, actually no, like since the beginning, right? I've always been just so opinionated on social media, and I've always not have a filter. Like I've never had a filter when I put things online, and I guess that's why also I went a little bit viral, right? Because I was just so brutally honest, and so like I don't care if I'm gonna like, you know, like ruffle feathers at that point. Okay, because like if you think about it now, if I take a step back and then I look at everything at that point, why I was so bold and why I was so like honest, it's also because like it was such a like it felt so far away. It felt like there was a distance, right? Like these are politicians, blah, blah, blah. Like I would never come across them in my life. I'm just like a regular human being. And therefore, like, you know, when you don't have like a like connection to these people, then sure, like I'll throw out opinions of all these people, right? So for me, when I started out, that was that, right? And also because I think back when it was still a small community of like just literally my friends and people who, you know, like the work that I did, it's sorry, just one sec. Yeah. So as I was saying, like back when the community was still small, like you kind of can curate how people around you would react to you, right? Kind of like, you know, it's kind of like the people that you would come across in your day-to-day life as well. So a lot of people back then were way more like understanding of like the kind of opinions that I had and whatnot, because they know who I am in real life as well. But then I think during that election period, I was still the same, right? Because, okay, I guess when people who would normally go through the route of like, you know, transitioning to becoming a public figure, they would have some time to do that transition. So like, for example, like if you go through a big company, let's say I signed to a media agency or a talent agency, like obviously there will be media training. There will be like, you know, being maybe shadowing someone who is a bit more senior, learning the steps along the way. And you'll probably have like maybe like a few months or maybe a year of like understanding how the industry works, how you should position yourself as a public figure and whatnot. In my situation, I had to learn it the hard way because literally it was overnight. I think over like a few days, it was like 10,000 new people. Where I didn't pivot was like the way I was still talking. I was still talking like as if like, you know, it's just like my friends, right? And I think along that, I mean, halfway through, a lot of like every day I was just like posting my opinions and obviously like getting excited, right? Because everybody was like chattering. In the past, when I was talking about politics, it's like maybe 1 or 2 people will reply me and I'll be like, okay, like cool. I wish more people engage with me. And then suddenly it's like, oh, you know, like thousands and thousands of comments and messages coming in every day. And obviously like it's something I care about and I'm excited about. So I was like, ooh, you know, and I was like freely posting online. And then where I think I kind of got like an awakening was when a few friends or acquaintances of mine who I knew in real life started texting me and were asking like, hey, do you understand now that you have like a platform? And do you understand now that like whatever you say can have an impact on like ABC? And I was like, ooh, yeah, okay. I mean, now that, you know, someone who you know in real life comes to you in a little bit more of like a hostile manner, it's kind of like, ooh, okay, I have to like understand now, like, why am I like rubbing people's like the wrong way, even though like let's say 99% of the people are excited about the content I do. If like only just 1% are not happy, like I still want to listen to them and also like understand like where they're coming from. So yeah, I think that to answer your question, like it is a balance. And I do think that like as much as we would want to think that we have like a personal filter to it, like we also do have to maybe consider like perhaps where we stand in the what do you call it, totem pole. And I understand like, you know, in relation to that, like how much of social responsibility we have with our words, if that makes sense.
You touched a bit about this earlier, right? About how you should have a voice and how you should speak up. But I think you can agree that, especially in the context of like a conservative Asian society like Singapore, you were one of the outliers, right? In both your content and both in your political analysis. So then, I guess generally, what do you think how should you view airing their opinion publicly, and why should they want to air their opinion publicly, right? Because in Singapore, it's like one small individual, a common Joe is not going to have a say, right, in the whole machine that is Singapore state media, right? So then why should views want to speak up if they are a small piece of the big picture?
Sure. So on one hand, I definitely agree that like young people should be a lot more opinionated online. Like, I mean, not that they should be, but like if they are, then they should be celebrated. I think that's my stance. But then also like in Singapore, obviously, like as you mentioned, like it's conservative, and there are actually a lot of people out there who also do not want to be opinionated. Like all they want to do is just to consume, and I respect that as well. And I think that that should be respected as well. Like there shouldn't be an expectation that like every young person should be vocal online. I think that's the first thing that we should be like clear about. Then the second part would then be like, like with young people, and I think, okay, so I think where we are at right now in Singapore is that we see how other youth in other countries have started using social media to ignite change, or ignite like positive, like I guess change with regard to issues that they care about, right? Be it like environment, be it like social issues and whatnot. So I think that Singaporeans are seeing the effect of like using social media, and I think that like where we are at right now is that like we are trying to see how those kind of rhetorics can be applied to like the Singaporean context. And in my opinion, I think that that's actually quite an exciting thing. Although I do agree that we should definitely be a lot more responsible in the way we go about doing it, because not everything can be copied and pasted from like country A to country B, because like every country has their own like issues, their own context, their own like nuances, their own layers to different issues. Even though on the like if we take a step back and we look at everything, it's like, yeah, okay, like like for example, inequality, right? It is like as a big issue, like sure, every country has that same big issue of inequality, but like I think when it comes to different societies, like there are like so many different tiers to it. So yeah, I guess what I'm asking for is then like for young people, yes, to be opinionated and to speak out and speak out, but also to be responsible. Back to your point about like whether or not like whether one voice matters or whatnot. Actually, I feel like that train of thought of like, if I'm just one voice, my voice won't matter, is very irrelevant in the age of social media. Because if your one voice resonates with other people, then that one piece of opinion actually can have like the same impact as perhaps even like an influential figure or a public figure with like thousands or millions of followers, only because of the power of social media today. So we have seen so many times where either on Facebook, on Twitter, or on Instagram, we see how people like specific individuals who are just like random like average people giving their opinions or hot takes on certain issues, and how that will go like extremely viral. And I think that, and that has happened multiple times now. So we really see that in this new age, like that one voice can be a big voice regardless of like the person who says, like the status of the person who says it. Yeah.
Right. So we've talked about really the importance of, okay, so we've talked about the implications of having a voice. We've talked about how to have a voice in terms of like whether you should be responsible. So I think what that leaves now is essentially, let's assume we're responsible. Let's assume we have something to actually voice. What are the avenues? What are the channels that students, youth can use to actually reach a larger audience? And I think that's quite an important question now, because we've just seen such a shift in the forms of media in the past few years. I mean, if you told someone like 5 years ago that you could resonate a message online with this app called TikTok, where you can show people with music and dancing and all these kinds of forms, I didn't even know what they would say. So essentially, just going back onto my question, like, what are the avenues, what are the channels that we can take?
And on top of that, considering your experience working with influencers in the media, perhaps any like smaller tips that you think helped gain traction to your post and help you hit the explore page?
Right. So, I mean, obviously, the first avenue would be the internet, right? The social media. So, the fun part of social media is that there's no rules to it. There's no like here's a particular way you need to make a post on Instagram, or here's a particular way you need to make a video on YouTube, right? You can make a 2 hour long YouTube video, you can make like a 1 minute long YouTube video, like it doesn't matter. Like it's just up to you as a creator, like how you want to put your content out there. So I guess it's identifying like what you're comfortable with. Obviously, like I was comfortable with just talking to a laptop at one point, and that worked for me, right? But if, to be honest, like I don't think it will work for anyone else, because it's just the way things are. But for me, like like it wasn't even finding, it was just like doing what I was comfortable with, and having people resonate with that. So I guess like moving on to the tips part, it's like with regard to the kind of content you make, I guess you can just see what people resonate with, what kind of content. I mean, the good thing about Instagram is that like, you can see data, right? You can see immediately like, okay, how many people shared your content, how many people viewed your content, liked your content, like engagement, reach, impressions, and whatnot. Like if you're serious about your content, like going out there and having more people see them, then hey, like study what you've been putting out there and seeing what actually resonates with people, and then refining your content from there on. The cheap way, I mean the cheap way, but you actually have to spend money is just to boost your posts, right? And then being smart about doing that would then be to target the people that you want to reach out to. For example, like if I'm talking about, let's say, food, then I'll obviously target like people who like food. It's as straightforward as that. And perhaps like, see that as an investment rather than like, ooh, I'm buying likes or something. Like at this point, it's like people used to make fun of like of certain influencers who would just like buy followers or buy likes, right? But then I think where the powers that be saw was that, hey, people are actually willing to spend in order to build their platforms. So I guess they did it in a more ethical way, whereby now it's called like boosting ads. So like if you have the means to do so, like maybe consider that. I've been lucky enough to not need to do that. Like I saw my content go viral like the organic way. And I mean, as much as I want to be able to say like, oh, here are my tips from my end, right? Because like I've been through that and whatnot, whereby like I think during election period, like collectively all my content had like over 1 million impressions, which is pretty like insane, right? But like if I was to boil it down and really give like say tips, then it would be to one, just like be comfortable, like try not to, I think whenever we listen to like gurus or experts or people who have made it, it's always like, okay, like they've done it this way, I'm just gonna copy and I'm just gonna like look at what they did and do it and do it the same way. But as I said, like with every single person, it's really their like the way they do it, that in their own voice, in their own personality and whatnot. Like in my way, how I went viral was that I was using my phone to film my laptop screen, and I was using a pen to point at the laptop like a teacher, right? Would that work for anyone else? I don't think so, right? If I look at like Bradman Rock, for example, like he's so funny, he has that kind of like crazy personality. Like, can I do that? I don't think so, right? If I look at like say like Pretty Please, who makes that kind of like funny videos, that's talent in script writing. Like, can I do that? I don't think so. So it's not just about like seeing what works for other people, but also making sure like you understand what works for you. And next, like again, drawing back to the previous tip that I gave, it was really just like understand like numbers and understand like the resources and information that's made available to you by those platforms. Yeah.
Again, so moving on to the
Okay.
last question, I guess as a recap of everything you've discussed, what do you think is the future of social media, the future of Singapore, and the future of politics in Singapore, I guess, as more and more youth get involved?
Okay, so one by one, what do I think is the future of social media? I think that now that we've seen the power of social media, I think we will see a lot more like incorporating social media into our daily lives and into like activities. So just the other day, I was very excited to jump onto this new platform called Clubhouse, which kind of saw like, and is when I looked at it, it was basically podcasts meets Zoom meeting meets Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. So that was very interesting, right? And I think that if that takes off, then we kind of like see how a new way of using social media can come into play, whereby we see like live podcasts becoming a thing. So that was interesting, and again, like that's very like informal and whatnot, which I think that as we get more integrated with like the life of social media, like I think that might be what people might want to consume a little bit more. Interestingly enough, I think that this like the last couple of years, we do see a lot of official content providers being like the newspapers, the magazines, whatnot, all pushing their content on social as well. So I think that that's another big change that we will see, is that like perhaps like even more entertainment outlets will see themselves integrating with social media. Like who knows? If we take a look at like Disney Plus, right? So just like earlier this week, I was watching the new WandaVision show on Disney Plus, and I was like, hey, if like in the past, like the movie world and the TV world would never mix, right? The two industries always kind of like saw each other as like kind of like competitors almost. But today we see how like they're fully integrated, and like for a big company like Marvel or Disney, who has like billion-dollar movie franchises, looking at streaming and saying that like, yeah, I want the same characters to now be not just on like a small screen, but on a tiny device screen on like your phone, then I think that the rules are getting changed like so fast these days, and like lines are getting blurred. So if the lines between like similar mediums, like for example movies and TV, like same in like I would say like same medium, like visual, right, are getting blurred, then why not like even more within like like interverticals in that sense. So I think that would be quite exciting. What is the second part of the question? Like
And the politics in Singapore and youth in Singapore.
okay, with politics in Singapore, I think GE 2020, as much as everyone's like, yeah, like that's like the first digital election and whatnot, it's like I think that it is going to be continue being like this in time to come, only because with every new election comes a new generation of young people who are all digital natives. So like if you if you're gonna have like a whole bunch of people coming in to vote who are digitally savvy, then it's just a no-brainer that the election will continue to be like this. In fact, like as much as everybody was like, oh, 2020 was the one that we saw like people going online, actually, right, for like my generation, like the one before, like 2015, was already like very online for us. It's just that like the people who were playing the traditional the game of like politics were very still immersed in like the whole world of like traditional campaigning and whatnot. But back then, I already remember people tweeting about it, tweeting about elections and whatnot, and using like even like back then, I think there was so much like digital content about the elections. So obviously not at the same scale as like 2020, but like it has already started. So from 15 to 20, we saw how it really snowballed and became this like big thing. And if let's say 20 was like the first year, then like can you imagine how much bigger it will be? So like I wouldn't say that like GE 2020 was so virtual only because of the pandemic. I think actually that the pandemic only sped it up, was only like a catalyzer, is that catalyst to like like politics shifting like digital. Yeah.
The last question that we ask everyone, if you had one piece of advice for youth, what would that one piece of advice be?
have fun. I think that's just it, like as much as like the world we live in today, I mean, obviously with the year that just went by, it was so tough, and like obviously, so much division and so much like painful narratives out there. I think that it's important to still remind ourselves to like enjoy the good parts, to like be happy about things. So I know it sounds so cliche and sounds like, oh, Instagram guru, right? But it's really not. It's really just like making sure that we spend time to like have a good time as well. Like, hey.
Thanks for listening in. This podcast has been brought to you by Desare, a platform designed to bridge the gap between the youth and professionals. You can read more about us at desare.org. And you can also check out the section titled Insights with Experts, where you can submit your questions that you might have for future experts and industries that you would like to learn more about. And you can also refer in any experts that you might know yourself.